"You
Stay
can't
with me.
handle even my," said the
Don't you give
giantess
up on me
Apache
now.
woman, but Cowboy proved her
Help!
wrong and.
We need
The
help.
desert town sat quietly between long stretches of dry land and distant hills. Life there was simple but never easy. The sun was harsh, the wind was strong, and only people with patience and courage could survive for long. Most families had lived there for generations, learning to respect the land and each other. Yet there was one person everyone talked about, someone who stood apart from the rest. Her name was Naya. She was an Apache woman, taller and stronger than most people in the town. When she walked through the dusty streets, her steps were steady and confident. Her shoulders were broad, her arms powerful from years of hard work, and her eyes sharp like she was always watching the world closely. People often whispered when they saw her, not because she had done anything wrong, but because they didn't know how to deal with someone like her. Naya had grown up in the open land, learning from her elders how to hunt, track, and survive. She knew how to read the sky for signs of weather and how to find water where others saw only dry ground. Strength, for her, was not something to show off. It was something she needed to live, but outsiders often judged her without understanding her life. Some men felt challenged by her presence. They were not used to seeing a woman who could lift heavy loads, fix broken fences, or ride long hours without complaint. A few tried to test her, speaking with pride and loud voices. Naya never wasted time arguing. She would simply do the work better and walk away, leaving them embarrassed. Over time, word spread and most stopped trying. Still, respect did not come easily. Many people admired her from a distance but avoided getting close. They believed she was too strong, too independent, too different. Naya noticed this, but she did not let it slow her down. She had learned long ago that depending on others often led to disappointment. Life had taught her to trust her own hands and her own judgment. Her days started before sunrise. While the town still slept, she was already moving, checking her horses, preparing tools, or heading out to inspect the land she helped protect. She worked with ranchers and elders not because she needed approval, but because the land belonged to everyone who cared for it. She believed responsibility was shared, even if respect was not. There were times when she felt the weight of loneliness, though she never showed it. At night, when the desert cooled and the sky filled with stars, she would sit quietly and think about her past. She remembered her parents teaching her never to bow her head in shame. "Be strong," they had said, "but be fair." Those words stayed with her through every challenge. One afternoon, as the sun burned high, a group of townspeople gathered near the old meeting area. News had spread that a cowboy was coming from the west. He was said to be skilled, calm, and hired to help with land disputes that had caused tension between ranchers and nearby settlements. Outsiders often brought trouble, and many people were unsure what to expect. Naya watched from a distance. She had seen many men like him before, confident at first, unsure later. Most came with big talk and left with excuses. She had no interest in proving anything to another stranger. If he respected the land and the people, she would respect him. If not, she would keep her distance. When the cowboy finally arrived, the town grew quiet. He rode in slowly, his movements controlled, his eyes taking in everything without judgment. He was not flashy or loud. His clothes were worn from travel, and his face showed signs of long days under the sun. He greeted people politely, nodding instead of boasting. As he dismounted, his eyes met Naya's for a brief moment. There was no fear in his expression, but no challenge either, just calm awareness. That alone caught her attention. Most men either avoided her gaze or tried to hold it too long. This one did neither. Later that day, work needed to be done near the edge of the land where arguments often started. Naya was already there, lifting heavy supplies and preparing tools. The cowboy approached, offering help. Some people nearby watched closely, expecting tension. She looked at him and spoke clearly, her voice steady. She warned him not to underestimate the work or her strength. Many before him had tried and failed. She told him that if he thought he could handle everything easily, he was wrong. Her words were not angry, just honest. The cowboy listened without interrupting. When she finished, he simply nodded. He said he wasn't there to compete or prove himself. He was there to work and to learn how things were done. His answer surprised those watching. It surprised Naya as well. Still, she did not trust words alone. Actions mattered more. She turned back to her task, expecting him to step aside or slow her down. Instead, he picked up the tools and began working quietly beside her. He did not complain about the heat or the weight. He matched her pace without trying to outdo her. The hours passed, and neither spoke much. The sun moved across the sky, and sweat covered their faces. People who passed by noticed something unusual. The cowboy did not try to take control, and Naya did not push him away. They worked like two people who understood effort without explanation. Inside, Naya felt a mix of caution and curiosity. She had built walls over the years to protect herself. Every time she let someone get close, they either tried to change her or left when things became difficult. She reminded herself not to expect anything different now. Yet as the day ended and the work was finished, she could not deny one thing. The cowboy had stayed. He had not given up or made excuses. He had not looked at her with fear or pride. He had treated her like a partner, not a challenge. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the land, Naya stood quietly, watching the desert breathe in the cool evening air. She did not smile, but something inside her shifted slightly. This was only the beginning, she knew. Many days and many tests lay ahead. For now, she turned and walked away, strong and steady as always. But behind her, the cowboy remained, looking at the land with the same calm focus. Neither of them knew it yet, but this meeting would change more than just their own paths. It would slowly challenge the beliefs of an entire town, starting with this very first day. The next morning arrived with a pale sunrise and a cool breeze moving across the desert. The town slowly came alive as doors opened and animals stirred. Naya was already awake, as usual. She tightened the straps on her boots, checked her tools, and prepared for another long day. The cowboy's arrival from the day before stayed in her thoughts longer than she expected. She didn't like surprises, especially when they involved people. She reached the work area early, expecting to begin alone. To her surprise, the cowboy was already there. He was repairing a broken fence line with steady hands, not rushing, not cutting corners. He noticed her approach and greeted her politely, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to be working beside her again. Naya gave a short nod and set down her gear. She did not speak much, but she watched carefully. Many people started strong and lost focus quickly. She believed that true character showed after the excitement faded, so she decided to test him without saying a word. The work that day was harder than usual. The ground was rough and the tools were worn. The sun climbed higher and the heat pressed down heavily. Naya moved with strength and purpose, lifting, pulling, and fixing with practiced ease. She increased her pace slightly, not to challenge him openly, but to see if he would fall behind. The cowboy noticed but said nothing. He adjusted his steps and continued working at her side. When his hands blistered, he wrapped them and kept going. When his back stiffened, he paused only long enough to stretch before returning to the task. He did not complain or ask for special treatment. This quiet determination caught Naya's attention. As the hours passed, a small group of townspeople gathered nearby, pretending not to watch. They whispered among themselves, curious about how long this calm cooperation would last. They were used to conflict, used to raised voices and broken pride. What they saw instead was steady work and silent respect. At midday, Naya stopped to drink water. The cowboy offered her some from his supply without a word. She accepted it, still cautious but less guarded. Small actions spoke louder than promises. She noticed he did not stare or act uncomfortable around her size and strength. He treated her presence as normal, which was rare. Later, a disagreement arose between two ranch hands nearby. Voices grew louder, and tension filled the air. Disputes like this were common, often ending badly. Naya kept working, but she watched carefully. The cowboy paused and looked toward the argument, then calmly walked over. He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. He listened to both sides without taking control or showing anger. His calm presence lowered the tension, and after some discussion, the men agreed to solve the issue peacefully. It wasn't dramatic, but it was effective. Naya observed everything. Many men tried to lead by force or loud words. This one used patience. That she respected. By late afternoon, the sky darkened slightly, warning of strong winds. The land could become dangerous quickly if left unprepared. Naya began securing loose materials and tightening structures. Without being asked, the cowboy followed her lead, doing exactly what was needed. It felt natural, as if they had worked together for years instead of days. As the wind picked up, dust filled the air. Visibility dropped and the work became risky. Naya moved confidently, guiding the process. The cowboy stayed close, trusting her knowledge of the land. At one point, a stack of supplies shifted suddenly. Naya reacted fast, pushing it away from him. He stumbled but remained standing. For a brief moment their eyes met. There was surprise in his and something like relief. He thanked her quietly. She nodded, pretending it was nothing, but inside she felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not pride, just a shared moment of trust. When the winds finally settled and the work was secured, both were exhausted. They sat a short distance apart, catching their breath. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It felt earned. The cowboy spoke first, not about strength or challenges, but about the land. He said he admired how she understood it, how she worked with it instead of against it. He admitted he still had much to learn. His honesty was simple and real. Naya listened. She didn't respond right away. Words were dangerous if spoken carelessly. Finally, she said that the land respected effort, not titles or pride. Anyone willing to learn could earn a place. It was not a compliment, but it wasn't a rejection either. That evening, the town buzzed with quiet talk. People noticed the change. They saw that the cowboy had not tried to prove her wrong or control her. They saw that Naya had not pushed him away. Something different was happening, something slow but meaningful. As days passed, their routine continued. Work, silence, shared effort. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they didn't. Each day tested patience, endurance, and trust. Each day, neither backed down. Naya still believed most people eventually showed weakness or pride. She reminded herself not to expect too much. Yet deep inside, a small part of her wondered if this time might be different. The cowboy, for his part, respected her boundaries. He never forced conversation or attention. He understood that trust took time, especially for someone who had spent a lifetime standing alone. One evening, as the sun set in shades of gold and red, Naya looked across the land she had protected for so long. For the first time in years, she didn't feel completely alone in carrying that responsibility. This was not friendship yet, not partnership, just the slow building of respect between two strong individuals who refused to underestimate each other. And as the desert night settled in, it became clear that the real test was only beginning. The days that followed were harder than before. The calm cooperation between Naya and the cowboy did not mean everything suddenly became easy. In fact, as they worked closer together, their differences became clearer. Both were used to leading, used to trusting their own judgment, and neither liked being told what to do. Respect was growing, but so was tension. One morning, Naya planned to move supplies to a distant area near the Rocky Hills. The land there was difficult, and only someone familiar with its paths could move safely. She prepared early, confident in her plan. When the cowboy arrived, he studied the route and suggested a slightly different path, one he believed would save time. Naya stopped and looked at him. Her face showed no anger, but her voice was firm. She told him that the land looked simple from a distance but could become dangerous if misunderstood. She had walked those paths since childhood. His suggestion, though well-meant, felt like doubt in her experience. The cowboy listened, but he did not step back completely. He explained calmly that sudden weather changes had shifted parts of the terrain. He had noticed signs of loose ground and believed caution was needed. His tone was respectful, but his confidence was clear. For the first time since they met, neither moved. The silence between them grew heavy. People nearby sensed the shift and paused their work, watching carefully. They expected raised voices or harsh words. Instead, something else happened. Naya turned and started walking toward her original route. She did not order him to follow. She believed actions would speak for her. The cowboy hesitated for a moment, then followed, keeping a careful distance. He trusted her knowledge, but he stayed alert. As they moved deeper into the rocky land, the ground became uneven. The sun climbed higher and shadows shifted. Naya walked with confidence, stepping where the ground was firm. The cowboy followed closely, watching her steps and the land around them. Suddenly, a small section of ground shifted under Naya's foot. She reacted fast, regaining balance, but it was clear the land was not as stable as before. She paused, her jaw tightening slightly. The cowboy stepped forward carefully and pointed out the loose soil ahead, exactly where he had warned earlier. For a brief moment, pride stood between them. Naya hated being wrong, especially in front of others. But she hated unnecessary risk even more. She took a slow breath and adjusted her path. She did not apologize, but she did not argue either. The cowboy said nothing. He did not smile or act proud. He simply continued working beside her, matching her pace. That quiet restraint mattered more than words. As the day went on, the work became heavier. Large stones needed to be moved, and supplies had to be secured before evening. The physical strain tested both of them. Sweat soaked their clothes and muscles burned with effort. Neither complained. At one point, Naya lifted a heavy load that should have required two people. The cowboy stepped in to help without hesitation. Together, they carried it safely. Their movements were not perfectly matched, but they adapted quickly, adjusting to each other's rhythm. This shared effort slowly softened the tension from earlier. They began to communicate more through gestures and brief words. When one noticed danger, the other listened. When one struggled, the other supported without being asked. By late afternoon, dark clouds appeared in the distance. A sudden storm in this land could be dangerous. Naya knew they had to finish quickly. She increased her pace, pushing herself harder. The cowboy followed, concerned but determined not to slow her down. The wind picked up sharply, carrying dust and grit. Visibility dropped and the air felt heavy. Naya's strength began to show signs of strain. She did not stop, but her movements grew slightly slower. The cowboy noticed. Without drawing attention, he shifted more weight onto himself during the hardest tasks. He did not announce it or make a show of helping. He simply did what needed to be done. When the storm finally hit, it came fast. Wind roared through the rocks and rain fell hard and sudden. They rushed to secure the last supplies and found shelter behind a large rock formation. Breathing heavily, they waited as the storm passed. In that brief shelter, close but not touching, Naya felt something unfamiliar again. Not weakness, but relief. She realized she had allowed someone to share the burden without feeling diminished. The cowboy spoke quietly, not about the storm or the work, but about trust. He said that strong people often carried too much alone because they believed no one else could understand their responsibility. He admitted he had done the same in his own life. Naya listened, her gaze fixed on the rain. She did not respond right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but honest. She said that relying on others had cost her before. Strength had been her shield for a long time. Letting that shield down felt risky. The cowboy nodded. He did not try to convince her otherwise. He said trust was not given all at once. It was built slowly through effort and respect. He was willing to wait. When the storm ended, they returned to town tired but successful. People noticed how they walked side by side, no longer distant, no longer tense. Whispers spread again, but this time with curiosity rather than doubt. Over the next few days, challenges continued. Small disagreements, tough decisions, physical exhaustion, but each time they faced them together. They learned when to lead and when to listen. Neither tried to dominate, neither backed away. Naya still tested him, sometimes pushing limits, sometimes holding back to see how he would respond. Each time he met the situation with calm strength, not stubborn, not proud, just steady. The cowboy, too, learned from her. He learned the land through her eyes, learned patience where he once rushed, learned respect beyond words. He stopped seeing her as someone to prove wrong or right. He saw her as someone shaped by experience. One evening after a long day, Naya stood alone watching the sky turn dark. The cowboy approached and stood nearby, leaving space between them. They shared the quiet without needing to fill it. Naya realized something then. The challenge she had spoken of earlier was not just about strength. It was about trust, endurance, and understanding. And slowly, without forcing it, the cowboy was proving that he could handle more than she had expected. The real clash had not been between two people, but between old wounds and new possibilities. And as the desert night settled around them, it became clear that neither of them would walk away unchanged. The weeks that followed brought a different kind of challenge. The work was no longer just about strength or endurance. It was about decisions that affected everyone. The land dispute that had brought the cowboy to the town began to grow more serious. Ranchers argued over boundaries, water access, and old agreements that were never written down. Tension slowly spread through the town like dry grass waiting for a spark. Naya felt the pressure deeply. She had always protected the land with quiet effort, but now people wanted answers, solutions, and leadership. Many looked to her because she understood the land better than anyone. Others looked to the cowboy because he was seen as neutral, someone who could speak calmly to all sides. This placed them both in difficult positions. One morning, a meeting was called near the old gathering area. Men and women from different sides came together, their faces tight with worry and frustration. Voices rose quickly. Old arguments returned, mixed with new fears. Some blamed outsiders, some blamed tradition, some simply wanted control. Naya stood quietly at first, listening. She noticed how quickly people spoke without listening to one another. She also noticed how the cowboy stood back, watching carefully, waiting for the right moment. When he finally spoke, he did not choose sides. He asked questions. Simple questions about needs, about fears, about what would happen if nothing changed. This did not please everyone. A few men grew angry, accusing him of avoiding responsibility. They said strong decisions were needed, not careful words. One of them looked at Naya and asked her directly whose side she was on. For a moment, the weight of the question pressed hard on her chest. She had spent her life standing alone, answering only to the land and her values. Choosing a side felt like a trap. She took a breath and spoke clearly. She said the land did not belong to one group alone. It belonged to all who cared for it. Any decision that ignored this truth would fail. The crowd grew quiet. Some nodded. Others crossed their arms. The tension did not disappear, but something shifted. People began to listen, even if they did not fully agree. After the meeting, Naya walked away, feeling drained. Leadership was heavier than any physical work. The cowboy followed at a distance, not pushing, not interrupting. When they reached a quiet spot, he spoke gently. He said she had spoken with honesty and courage, even when it was uncomfortable. He admitted that he, too, felt the weight of trying to bring peace where pride stood tall. That afternoon, they worked together to inspect water sources along the disputed land. Water was life in the desert, and whoever controlled it held power. The sun was unforgiving, and the ground cracked under their feet. As they walked, Nair explained how the water paths changed with seasons, how blocking one area could harm another miles away. The cowboy listened closely. He asked thoughtful questions, not to challenge her, but to understand fully. He began to see the land not as lines on a map, but as a living system that demanded balance. Suddenly, they heard shouting in the distance. A small group of men were arguing near a water point. One had tried to redirect the flow without agreement. The situation was tense and close to turning physical. Naya moved forward quickly, her presence commanding attention. She did not shout. She spoke firmly, reminding them of the consequences. She pointed out how the change would hurt families beyond their own. Her words were direct but fair. When one man refused to listen, the cowboy stepped in, standing beside her rather than in front. He supported her words, adding calm reasoning instead of force. Together, they managed to stop the action before damage was done. Afterward, Naya felt her hands shaking slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. She sat down heavily on a rock. The cowboy offered her water and waited quietly. For the first time, she did not hide her exhaustion. She spoke softly, admitting that being strong all the time was tiring, that sometimes she wished she did not have to carry so much alone. The words surprised even her. She had not planned to say them. The cowboy did not rush to respond. When he did, he said strength did not disappear when shared. Sometimes it grew. He reminded her that leadership did not mean standing above others, but standing with them. As days passed, their cooperation became more visible. People began to approach them together, asking questions, seeking guidance. This made Naya uneasy at first. She feared losing herself, feared being misunderstood again, but she also saw results. Fewer arguments, more listening, small steps toward agreement. One evening, a young boy approached Naya. He said he wanted to be strong like her one day, not loud or proud, but steady. The simple words stayed with her long after the boy left. She realized that her actions were shaping more than land disputes. They were shaping how strength itself was understood. The cowboy noticed the change in her. She still worked hard, still led with confidence, but she allowed space for others now. She asked for input. She accepted help, not as weakness, but as choice. However, not everyone welcomed this change. A small group grew resentful, believing their influence was slipping away. They whispered that Naya was changing, that the cowboy was controlling things. Rumors began to spread. One night, Naya confronted the cowboy about it. She asked directly if he was trying to take over, to claim authority that was not his. The question was sharp, born from old wounds. The cowboy met her gaze without offense. He said he had no desire to control anything that was not his. He reminded her that he had always followed her lead when it came to the land. He said if she ever felt he crossed a line, he would step back. His honesty eased her fear, but the doubt lingered. Trust, she knew, was still fragile. The following day, a serious decision had to be made about water sharing. Tempers were high. Naya was expected to speak first. She looked around at the faces waiting for direction. Then, unexpectedly, she turned to the cowboy and asked for his view. The crowd reacted with surprise. Some frowned, some looked curious. The cowboy paused, understanding the weight of the moment. He spoke carefully, supporting a solution that balanced fairness with tradition. He emphasized that the final decision belonged to the community, not to him. By inviting him to speak, Naya had taken a risk. By speaking with humility, he had honored that trust. The meeting ended without full agreement, but with a plan to move forward together. It was not perfect, but it was progress. That night, as the desert cooled and stars filled the sky, Naya sat alone, thinking. She realized that proving someone wrong did not always mean defeat. Sometimes it meant showing a different way to stand strong. The challenge she once believed no one could handle was no longer just hers. And slowly, she was learning that sharing the weight did not break her strength. It revealed it. The final weeks of the season arrived quietly, but the changes they brought were deep and lasting. The desert looked the same on the surface, wide, dry, and endless, but something beneath it had shifted. The land disputes that once filled the air with tension were slowly calming. People still disagreed at times, but they were learning to speak instead of shout, to listen instead of accuse. This change did not happen by magic. It came from steady effort, patience, and example. Naya felt the difference every day. When she walked through town, people no longer stepped aside with uncertainty. They greeted her with respect, some even with warmth. She was still strong, still independent, but now she was also seen as someone who could unite rather than stand alone. This was new for her, and she was still learning how to carry it. The cowboy remained by her side, never pushing, never claiming credit. He continued to work the land, speak calmly in meetings, and support solutions that included everyone. Some had once believed he would leave when things became difficult. Instead, he stayed through the hardest moments, when progress was slow and frustration high. One morning, news spread of a serious problem upstream. Heavy rain in the distant hills had changed the flow of water, threatening to flood one area while leaving another dry. If handled poorly, it could undo months of effort and bring old arguments back stronger than before. Naya and the cowboy went together to see the situation. The ground was soft, the water fast and unpredictable. People gathered, worried and unsure. Some wanted quick fixes. Others wanted to protect only their own land. Naya studied the flow carefully. She knew rushing would cause harm. She began giving instructions, clear and firm, guiding people to reinforce weak areas and redirect water safely. The cowboy helped organize the work, making sure everyone understood their role. He spoke with respect, reminding people that cooperation now would protect everyone later. The work was exhausting. Mud clung to boots. Arms ached. Tempers flared under pressure. At one point, a group argued over where to place a barrier. The tension rose quickly. Naya stepped forward, her voice calm but strong. She explained the reason behind her decision, not demanding obedience but offering understanding. The cowboy supported her explanation, adding simple details that made it easier to accept. Slowly, the argument faded, replaced by action. By nightfall, the danger had passed. The water flowed safely and the land was protected. People stood quietly, tired but relieved. In that shared exhaustion, something powerful happened. They saw what was possible when strength and patience worked together. Later that night, a gathering was held near the old meeting area. There was no formal announcement, no loud speeches. Just people sharing food, talking softly, and reflecting on how far they had come. An elder stood and spoke briefly. He thanked Naya for her unwavering dedication to the land and the people. Then he thanked the cowboy for his steady presence and respect. He said true strength was not about standing above others, but about lifting everyone together. Naya felt a tightness in her chest. Praise had never been easy for her to accept. She looked at the ground, then at the people around her. She spoke honestly. She said she had always believed strength meant carrying everything alone. She admitted she had been wrong. The cowboy listened quietly, his expression unchanged but thoughtful. When she finished, he spoke only a few words. He said he had not proven anything on his own. Everything they had achieved came from shared effort and trust. In the days that followed, the work slowed. The urgent problems were handled. Life returned to its steady rhythm. But the relationships built during the hard times remained. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with soft colors, Naya and the cowboy stood overlooking the land. The air was calm. For a long time, neither spoke. Nea finally broke the silence. She said she remembered the first day they met, when she warned him that he could not handle her strength. She admitted that she had meant more than physical power. She had meant her stubbornness, her walls, her past. The cowboy nodded. He said he had understood that from the start. He had never tried to change her or overcome her. He had only tried to stand with her, even when it was difficult. She looked at him then, truly looked. She saw not a challenge, not an outsider, but someone who respected her without fear or pride. Someone who did not need to prove her wrong to prove himself right. She said quietly that he had handled it, not by force, but by patience. Not by control, but by consistency. The cowboy smiled slightly, not in victory, but in understanding. The town slowly began to prepare for a new season. Plans were made together. Responsibilities were shared. Nea continued to work the land, but she no longer carried every burden alone. She trusted others to step forward, just as she once had. The cowboy decided to stay longer than planned, not because he was needed, but because he chose to be there. He had found purpose not in fixing problems, but in being part of a community that valued respect. Over time, stories spread beyond the town. People spoke of the Apache woman who was strong beyond measure and the cowboy who did not try to defeat her but walked beside her. Some told the story as a challenge. Others told it as a lesson. But the truth was simpler. Strength was never about proving someone wrong. It was about learning when to stand firm and when to stand together. Nea knew this now. The land knew it too. And as the desert stretched endlessly under the open sky, it held the quiet proof that real strength does not divide. It endures, adapts, and brings people forward, together.